I haven't really talked much about the details of my dad's story, but this is like one of these things. So, my dad was against the whole medical system. He started walking around a lake barefoot, trying to, you know,
Grounding.
reground and all this kind of stuff. And he was a pretty healthy person. But a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, he had something removed from his scalp that got tested positive for melanoma. And his kind of attitude was, well, I'm just going to ignore this and try
Hmm.
to live. He's all the doctors we like. He's following them on YouTube. He's trying to take their best advice, and he's trying to treat it himself by being natural. And about a year goes by, and he has another one. And so now he's like, well, shit, I guess I will at least go to a dermatologist or a cancer radiologist, dermatologist type person and see what they would do, because now it's more than one thing. And when he was in that office, he got a terrible dizzy spell. And from that dizzy spell, he was airlifted to a hospital.
Oh
And
God.
then they did the CT scans and everything, and he had 10 tumors in his brain. So this is what I'm hearing. So he has this constant dizziness feeling, vertigo. It's like torture. I have this once in a while when I get congested. It gets into my ear because I have deafness in the ear. I think it's related, but I get terrible vertigo on top of a flu for a week or whatever. So I empathize, and he's laying there with his hand over his head, just like, I need this dizziness to stop. So he wouldn't have ever been in the hospital or gotten medical treatment if he didn't have this debilitating dizziness. And
Hmm.
he got it when he walked into the doctor's office. So I kind of think it's like lab coat syndrome or something, because he doesn't like these people anyway. So then they start giving him this targeted radiation because I guess he lost his autonomy when we got put into this situation. And
Yeah,
so
that happens a lot.
so then they start doing this targeted radiation, and it's not really working. And so my dad's like, I just want to go home. I don't really care what happens. I just want to get home. I do not want to die here. And so I'm like, okay, I will get you home. They I had to sign him out against medical orders and medical advisement. And they were giving him a steroid too to try to shrink the tumors to stop the dizziness. So he starts complaining about a pain in his gut. And they're like, oh, he has sepsis. His gut has ruptured and he's bleeding out now. And this is a whole nother problem. So my dad's like, I want to go. So on his 75th birthday, I broke him out and we got him home. And we get home just in time for him to be like, I'm in so much pain. I've never been in this kind of pain. Now he can't talk to me. The dizziness is gone, but he can't talk to me because he's in so much stomach pain. So the hospice people give us oxys and morphine and fentanyl and a regiment to give him these drugs. And now my head is just spinning because I'm like, how did I ever get caught up in this? Now I'm feeding my dad oxys and morphine. Like, it's just insanity because he's in so much pain. And then I find out that a side effect of the steroids is rupturing the gut. So
Hmm.
it's not like my dad had no problem that needed to be treated, but I've been expressing it as the hospital system, the medical system killed my dying father. He didn't
Yeah,
die from melanoma. He had melanoma, I guess, that got him into the system, but he died because the steroid you gave him caused his gut to rupture. And then for 3 days at home, I changed his diapers while feeding him Oxycontin. That's how my dad died.
dude,
Um,
I'm so sorry. First of all, like that, I've had this happen to people in my family too, and it fills me with rage. To be honest with you, it makes me very angry and frustrated, and you just get sucked into the medical meat grinder and you can't get them out.
right.
Like I've seen it so many times. I've talked to so many people who have had that same experience. I mean, with my grandma, she was a smoker her whole life. Developed pneumonia, was having trouble breathing, went to the hospital. They pump her full of opioids, which are a respiratory depressant, and she stopped breathing and died. Like that's an obvious side effect. Like that's a known side effect of these opioid drugs. When someone has pneumonia, you don't give them a respiratory depressant when they already can't breathe. Like it's so obvious, right? And I don't know I don't say the doctors that were prescribing those drugs, I didn't think they're doing it out of malice.
No.
I think they're just doing what they're trained to do, what they're taught. And what they're taught is the Rockefeller allopathic model. Like all the entire design of the medical system, how we treat disease, when they see X symptom, they give X drug. Like they're following a procedure. And if they don't, they lose their job, their malpractice insurance goes up, they get, reviewed by the medical board. They're getting pressure from every vector to conform to that system.
Right.
And when it comes to people who have these like crazy health events or like some symptom, have you heard of German New Medicine?
Of course.
At all?
Yeah, of course.
They have a very different perspective of cancer. I find interesting that like it's connected to traumatic events or like separation disorders, and that it goes away on its own once that stuff is resolved. So I mean, I don't want to ask about like the personal relationship you have with him or like how you guys are connected or whether or not he had some traumatic thing. It's hard to say what causes that stuff, but we know the medical system makes it worse. Definitively, always makes it worse.
And I'm an open book, and I'm trying to look at this objectively and be like, well, what could we have done differently? Once we're in the hospital, there's not a lot we can do. And you had to go to the hospital because you had this debilitating dizziness. You couldn't stand. You needed this problem to go away. And then the CAT scan shows 10 tumors in the brain. So we're pretty far downfield. I don't know what we could have done differently. What caused these tumors? Is there a relationship to emotional trauma? I mean, there's a lot about my dad's childhood I don't know, and we don't talk about. We had a good relationship. He always gave me a good life, but there's a lot of stuff that came before me. He was 35 when I was born. That's a whole life. I'm barely 39 now. To imagine everything that has happened in my life being kind of locked away, that's a lot of life to lock.
It's hard to comprehend. Yeah. And that, I mean, there's some interesting evidence on like these traumas being passed down through children too. I mean, my mom had a very rough childhood with like being abused and locked in a cellar for a week, like crazy stuff. And my dad, similar thing, like he grew up in a very strict Catholic household. So, punishment was often just abuse when they did something wrong. And then like him buying a horse with his own money and then his dad selling it against his will. And he like put everything he had into taking care of like stuff like that stays with you forever.
Yeah.
Like that. And then the diseases that may cause, that's a very interesting perspective from German New Medicine, and the way to treat it is like dealing with that. But ultimately, I mean, it could be environmental toxin related too. Like we swim in such a toxic soup. It's so incomprehensible. And there is a trillion chemicals and compounds and derivatives that we have never studied. We have no idea what they do to us, and we have no idea where you can get it from. Like, for example, like you could be sitting in a computer chair right now and it's off gassing various flame retardants and like formaldehydes. Your carpet, like the food you eat. And this is what we were talking about earlier in the pod. Like the highest source, if you want to get the most heavy metals in your diet, do a plant-based diet.
Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right.
The Higherside Chat Show.